Now you can imagine with coming up with, designing, and analyzing food plots for a living and seeing that times 900 around the country, there are so many food plot failures. And we could make a list of just food plot failures and the biggest, most common food plot failures. I might have already created that video before, I'm not sure, but one of the food plot failures I see often is when someone, reader, viewer, clients, doesn't really matter, they're buying a toss and plant type product. And what I mean by that, there's bags and mixes out there. You can make some mixes on your own. And the idea is that you're going to take this product and with very little site preparation at all, other than maybe a rake, you're going to throw this seed on the soil and you're going to get a great catch, and it's going to be this really cool honey hole that you can hunt over this fall. And you can do it really quick, right? You could do it September 1st, Labor Day, and throw this out and you're going to have a great product. Well, I really want to see you not fail when it comes to food plots. And let's talk about if that's going to work. There's some certain conditions that need to happen. And I'll give you this as an example right here. This is a great spot if we wanted to put one of those products, come up with something on our own, because we have a tree stand right here, we have a water hole here, a mock scrape here, another tree stand here. This is one of our set. We have a trail camera right here. We could plant this logging road if we wanted, and with some type of plant and toss and plant product, and try to get a good catch. Now, we wouldn't do that because we have food plots 200 yards away, 150 yards away. We want them to simply pass through here. We don't want them to linger. Sometimes a food plot in a remote location is not a good idea, and this is an example, one of those. But if we were putting a product like that on the ground here, there's several things that need to happen. First, the seed has to get on the soil. So if you have too much vegetation in the area, if you have too many weeds, too many grasses, broadleaves, whatever it might be, you need to remove those first. Remove them by spraying, remove them by a handheld rototiller, by a tractor, whatever it takes. And a lot of people, a lot of hunters out there don't have that type of equipment, which is why some type of toss and plant product is a great product, because they can look at it like, hey, I don't need a lot of equipment. I can just throw this out there and whoa, let's not use glyphosate, because glyphosate's a bad word, even though someone might be putting 50% DEET on their arms while they're out in the woods and camping this time of year. I mean, there's so many products that we use that you need to use and follow the warnings, and they're okay products to use. Glyphosate is one of them, but someone might say, well, I don't want to use any weed killer, and so they'll just throw the seed out here and it doesn't grow. The seed has to get on the soil. You have to eliminate the weeds, you have to eliminate the green that's there, or it's not going to grow. Now, number two, when that seed germinates, because if the seed does get on the soil here and you have cleared the weeds, then it will germinate at some point with enough moisture. Now, when that seed does germinate, it needs to have sunlight. So just because you've cleared it, just because you found this little beautiful spot, little honey hole that is an appropriate spot for a food plot, you still have to get sunlight onto that germinating seed or it will not grow. And that's why, say for example, a brassica seed, a rape, a turnip, a radish, you can get those to grow and germinate extremely easily, but it needs full sunlight. So imagine that seed, it's only going to pop and germinate about 1/4 inch. That just initial growth is only going to be 1/4 inch at most. So if it's buried 1/2 inch, it's still going to germinate. It doesn't get any sunlight, and then it dies. And so that's why you need sunlight, and everything needs sunlight. Rye is shade tolerant, clover is shade tolerant, but you still need sunlight. And I'm talking about rye grain. We'll talk about rye grass here as a third point. But once that comes up, you have to get sunlight onto it. And so you need to look to the southerly sky. In that southerly sky during the summertime, I know there's an exact amount, but let's say it's 220 degrees of sunlight. It's going to come further, almost west-northwest, and then it's going to come all the way around almost east-northeast. And that's that daylight sun in the southern sky. And so you need to look up here, and in this place right here, we would need several hours of chainsawing just to get enough light into this area. There's full canopy, just incredible up here with heavy growth. And so the first initial thought, have to clear the weeds. We get that done. Have to get good sunlight to this after germination with moisture. And if we can't get good sunlight to this area, it's not a great place to plant, no matter what it says on the bag. Thirdly, a lot of mixes, a lot of commercial mixes contain rye grass. Rye grass is something you don't want in your food plot, but a lot of commercial mixes include it because it looks pretty and a bunch of green pops up in that place. And rye grass will grow just about anywhere. It looks like a ground coverage, and deer don't eat it to the tune of 80–90%. It's a very, very low on their priority list and their forage preference list of food plot seeds. They're not going to eat it. That's why a lot of quality mixes do not carry ryegrass. So if there's a lot of ryegrass in the mix, and I'm talking about ryegrass, if you're buying a bag that's this big and it says it covers a half acre, think about rye grain. To cover a half acre and to do it well, you need at least 100 pounds per acre. That's 2 50-pound bags like this. So if you're thinking that this is going to cover a half acre or a small spot, it's not. Ryegrass is a really bad ingredient. A lot of commercial mixes contain it because they just want you as the average food plotter, average guy with no equipment, to show some green, but the deer don't eat it, so why plant it? And again, it goes back to, you have to control the weeds. You have to have good seed to soil contact. After moisture, it will germinate no matter what kind of sunlight you're getting, and if there's no sunlight, it will die. And fourth, you still have to have decent pH. Even if it's low 5s, you still have to add lime in a lot of areas to 6, somewhere around in there. You still have to have decent pH, what I would call decent, more like 5.8 to 6, 5.7 to 6.2, somewhere in that range, not perfect at 7. So you have to add lime, and then you have to add fertilizer. So if you have the soil corrected, it's decent pH, you can then add fertilizer. If the pH isn't going to be corrected, you can add all the fertilizer to it that you want, it's not going to grow. I've literally had seed that germinated in the UP of Michigan on sandy soil, and it was 4.7 for pH. The rye grain germinated, which rye will grow where no other seed will. Buckwheat's right behind it. And literally the rye grows, gets 3 inches tall, turns red, and dies because the pH was not corrected no matter how much fertilizer I put on it. So you have to get the seed on the soil, followed by moisture, followed by sunlight. Don't use ryegrass or mixes that contain ryegrass. And then you have to correct the pH so that fifth, it can take up the fertilizer that you put in the area. Now that's just talking about getting that little, toss and plant product to grow in your area, or some mix that you come up with in that location. Now, then you have to ask yourself, is this a stopping point? Which is a bad thing for deer. You don't want them to sit here and then you have a stand on either side and you can't get out, you spook them. Think about if it is the perfect location, it's going to be on the way to a bigger food source, a larger food source. And I wouldn't necessarily add a mock scrape and a water hole in that location because it's already an attractant. I'd set up another stand location further back into the interior, closer to the bedding area, where I'd add a mock scrape or a water hole or both, then a small hunting plot, and then a distant food plot or other destination food source in the afternoon. That's the perfect setup for a micro plot, for possibly a toss and plant plot. But you have to get those 5 conditions to happen first. That's how you get those to grow. Don't be misled that you can just throw it on anywhere. And I know a lot of those contain good planting instructions that you should follow, but you have to have those 5 ingredients first in order to get that toss and plant to grow. And if it's located in the right location, you might be headed for a lot of fun this fall, but you have to get it to grow first.